Hi everyone, welcome to my review of George Lucas's Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith from 2005. So yes, we're back once again ready to discuss another Star Wars film, and this time around the final film in the prequel trilogy. So yes, a very interesting entry, and of course, there will be a spoiler warning for this discussion. If you haven't seen this film, I simply recommend seeing it first, and then come back to this video, and we can go from there. And you won't get, the plot revealed to you before you've seen the film. So yes, with all that said, let's dig into my thoughts on this film, and a very fascinating entry. We'll start with my backstory with this film. Obviously, previously as well, I have been reviewing the other two prequels. Have said in those videos that, I've never been a fan of those films really, growing up. I had access to them from a very young age, especially for, The Phantom Menace. Loved the originals, obsessed over them. Couldn't get into those two prequels. Just found them quite boring, really boring actually for me back then. They've grown on me more than back then, especially Attack of the Clones. I do now like that film. I do like it, and none of them are bad at all. Overall, I just think they aren't underwhelming for me, and they're not ones that I can still really fully get into. And there's just always more potential hidden in there that I'd like to see that doesn't quite come through. But yes, especially with Phantom Menace. But seeing this one, first time I saw this, I was quite a bit older than seeing obviously, especially the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. Saw this at a family member's house for the first time on DVD. It was so shortly after it was released on DVD. I remember seeing it, and for some reason, even though I didn't really get into the previous two back then, I was quite interested to see this one. I'd heard many things about this. People at school as well were saying that this is it's epic, it's sick, and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, it was an amazing film. Not that I listened to that too much, but I was kind of intrigued why people were raving about this so much, kind of thing. And I just was interested in seeing this. I'd heard it was more darker and all this as well, and seeing just the final film of the trilogy to see how what this was like, and a new Star Wars film that I hadn't seen, with the episode, in the title, I had to kind of see it, of course, even if I wasn't big on the film, but yes, I sat down to see this on DVD, as I say, and I was surprised, I really was. I actually found myself really enjoying this film, and over the years, I've kind of I had some mixed feelings on a lot of aspects of the film. When I got to an age where I was kind of saying, okay, what do I think about this aspect, this character, all this, and how does it compare as well, really to other films. I was kind of, I had some mixed feelings, although I've always enjoyed the film, so that's good. It's definitely a more positive experience I've had with this film than the previous two. I think, yes, seeing it, I was basically, yes, very involved in the action consistently. This time around when I saw it for the first time, the characters, it was more interesting seeing a darker side as well, and just the storytelling, the narrative was more investing for me. There wasn't really too many boring scenes for me. Seeing as a kid, kind of political meetings and all this. There wasn't too much. It's more involved in the characters, around pivotal characters, obviously. So obviously, Palpatine, and of course Anakin. Really seeing how he came to the dark side and became Darth Vader. This is the one that wraps that up, really, and also kind of continuing, the Clone Wars and all this, and obviously we have Obi-Wan being dispatched to kind of take out General Grievous, which is something that did appeal to me as well, especially as a kid, seeing this kind of cool. Villain with the four arms, the four lightsabers. When that happens, in the film, I was really, kind of surprised by that moment. And growing up as well, I played different Star Wars games, video games. So characters like General Grievous, it was cool to kind of play as him as well. A cool character, and I really like the way he transforms. In that kind of massive action set piece earlier in the film, and. I was finding myself very much, having fun with this. It's much more of a fun film, I find. It's a very consistent film. It's the flow of it, in terms of just entertainment, scene to scene basis, and a blend, between dramatic moments, even romance, moments, and this is definitely better than Attack of the Clones, and blending with different things towards the end. The dark side, we really feel it in this film compared to obviously the previous two. The first one really didn't need to have it in there. It's an interesting one that it is just Anakin is a very young kid, so it didn't really need to bring in too much of that kind of stuff there. Maybe just subtle foreshadowing, and it kind of done that. But it's mainly Attack of the Clones that I can kind of compare this to in that sense. I will say, I don't think this film, is, a great film. It does fall short slightly of being overall a great film, although it's got some real great moments. I think overall it's a very good film, and my general thoughts are, this, it's the best it could have been, really, considering this is the final in this prequel trilogy that is not, for me personally, really living up to any kind of Star Wars name in those films. It isn't really setting up, this kind of arc too much. So this film, considering, especially Attack of the Clones, it wasn't really, tapped into, built up, set up with the kind of turn to the dark side. For me personally, this film, it does a real fine job of kind of portraying that, all things considered. Having said that, I do think, in terms of Anakin and his turn to the dark side, I still think it's a bit abrupt. I really do. I think just so many kind of moments that are kind of very sporadic. You could say very much straight in there with a moment, an action. Kind of a thing that Anakin does. That is part of his turning to the dark side and kind of not resisting temptation. All this is kind of interestingly done with Padme. I will say that and how he has visions, but then again he has some visions and then that's it. It's enough for him to kind of betray everyone and kind of do despicable things in a film. It wasn't built up enough in Attack of the Clones for me, and in this film it could have been more I think believable, and kind of in a human way. It just feels very much this is what the character has to do, in this moment, and then it happens, and that's it. And really, I think one of the things that kind of elevates the film is the performances, are stronger. The script is definitely the weakest element of this film. Still, I do think it's personally, for me, with all respect, there's some real issues with the script and the way characters delivering the lines. A few of them. But we do have an absolutely stunning performance from Ewan McGregor, and he really shines in this film. He is amazing in this film. This is the one where and the other previous two were him becoming Obi-Wan as we know him, and in this one, he really lives up to that name of what we kind of saw in a sense in New Hope. With Alec Guinness, of course, he really does his best here, and he did, of course, in the previous two. But he's allowed to deliver the emotional side, and the wise kind of Obi-Wan character that we know from the originals is kind of really comes full circle here. And I love Ewan McGregor in this film. He is great, and also characters like Samuel Jackson, actors like Samuel Jackson, they give him more to do in this. That's what I really like as well. Mace Windu, he has a pivotal scene in this film in particular, as we know, and he does unfortunately get killed in the middle portion of the film. And Anakin, he's kind of being used by the Emperor. Obviously, in the originals, it was very clear. It became clear. The great side of that is the arc of Darth Vader is not the true villain. In that sense of the Empire, and it's the Emperor pulling the strings. He's the one that corrupted him in that sense. So we see that in this film. Kind of the origins of that, really. The Emperor kind of tempting Anakin and manipulating him, and Anakin giving in as well to the temptation. All this, and becoming quite hateful, resentful, and the whole visions thing. Of him seeing Padme die. Through childbirth. This is the main thing that kind of sparks him to give in and kind of join the Emperor, of course, and the origins of the Empire as we know it, really, in the next films in the timeline. So a very interesting film. Explores a lot of themes in this portrayal as well. As honor and legacy, temptation, of course, as well comes into that, and love. I guess how it's very interesting. There's a lot going on in this. Opens up though with a really enjoyable and kind of fast-paced action set piece. You know, again, the thing about this film, it is more, even though it's darker, it's just way more energetic and kind of fun. And we actually have some humour in this film. You know, there is a couple of moments of comedy, light comedy in the previous two entries, but really, it's especially in the first, you know, in the prequels. Phantom Menace, you know, Jar Jar Binks is the main, you know, kind of the kind of comic relief character, and you know, for me, it's not funny at all. In this film, we do have some camaraderie as well between Anakin and Obi-Wan. I really like that. It's just very charming. You know, there are throughout moments that are a bit cringy and come off a bit silly, but you know, I would take that over you know, the previous two really, where they didn't really attempt too much comedy. It's very interesting, and you know, in the originals, you know, I think, you know, A New Hope, especially in Empire Strikes Back, they have some of my favourite kind of comedy moments in a film, especially you know, kind of non-comedic moments. You know, with Yoda, especially in Empire Strikes Back, it's hilarious, but it's never, you know, goes too far. Perfect balance of tone, but a great use of comedy, masterful use, some of the very best. Luckily in this film, I feel there is a bit of comedy in there, so it is more, it makes it more believable, you know, it does, especially in a sci-fi or fantasy, in these genres. I really do think comedy is very much key, actually, and you know, it kind of makes it more believable, and you know, kind of like the human characters in this world, so you can get more attached. The previous two is very stilted, and you know, lack of comedy was definitely evident. You know, I don't mean Jar Jar Binks, because that just for me was not funny. But yes, we have some really good actions. Consistently, the action is way better than the previous two. Having said that, none of them, you know, none of the set pieces or duels in this film especially live up to the Phantom Menace. You know, that duel at the end with, of course, Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Darth Maul in the final act of that film. You know, that was stunning. The choreography and just the visceral feeling of that, you know, the tension in that. It was a different thing really, and it never, you know, it's never kind of done in these films. There are some jewels in this. Obviously, we have early on Count Dooku versus Anakin, mainly there, and you know, that is a really good scene. And you know, I do like the way, you know, he rescues you know, Palpatine there, and yeah, I really like that, you know, the way kind of there are hints there, obviously foreshadowing there, you know, him turning, you know, kind of not being able to resist the urges there. Again, after that though, there's definitely rushed moments involving, you know, Anakin and Palpatine, and you know, just very dialogue heavy with that. You know, it's not fully felt, and it is more, you know, kind of he's telling these things, and then, you know, what will this character then do? It's not fully felt for me, but again, I think Lucas really, you know, kind of delivers overall in just entertaining film. There are a few things, yes, that don't quite make sense to me, and you know, the feeling is a little bit off at times. Obviously, once again, for me, as a Star Wars film, you know, tonally a couple of moments, but mainly he does deliver a very consistent film. You know, just as a blockbuster entertainment piece, and the visuals. We will say the visuals are a massive step up from the previous two. He uses the CGI better here. That's mainly what it is. You know, it is a tool, CGI, and you know, you can pump in millions and millions of dollars into, you know, CGI itself, but it doesn't really matter too much. It's more about how you use it. And one of the things about this, it is darker scenes at times. We have a lot of reds, obviously, you know, fire, and I really think that, you know, that is definitely plays a big part in not kind of noticing as much those backgrounds that were very obvious in the previous two. You know, and just the way in which the characters and the people are clashing with the backgrounds is very obvious in those films. It's less so in this, and I just think it's much more visually interesting, and you know, more depth in the backgrounds, in the models and all of this. It really is at times very impressive, and you know, there's the kind of fight scenes, you know, kind of you know, the ships and, you know, in space, I do really enjoy this. I think it's very impressive, and yeah, the use of colour is very, very good in this film, actually, and yeah, overall, much better, than the previous two. The visuals, the cinematography, the editing, is definitely a big step up as well. More or less, it's got a very, very consistent flow, and we go in between sequences without really too much kind of lulls. Not every single scene in this film, is highly compelling to me. But for the most part, it is, and I think the way it's edited and the way it flows in between sequences, the kind of blend and balance between dialogue, action, and just very interesting visual moments. Of course, I do really enjoy it. The score, obviously, we don't really need to say too much about the score because John Williams once again delivers a stunning piece. Overall, I'd say probably this is a step up from the previous two. I don't think there's any piece that's as good as Duel of the Fates, but Battle of the Heroes, a piece which we'll get to in a moment, towards the end of the film, it really is stunning, and overall it's scored wonderfully in the emotional moments. Order 66, another standout sequence, it really is stunning, in the music department throughout the entire film. I also really like, the way in which we have more lore in this film, really, or more effective lore and exposition, of the universe, and we also have, as I've mentioned previously, Order 66, a sequence later on in the film, of course, seeing many of the Jedi being, slaughtered, really, and it really is the use of music there. I do love, especially Yoda in this film, the way he's used, and portrayed. I think it's a bit more Yoda-like, if you will, I guess, and because in the previous two films, in this one as well, we have a very, very serious Yoda, and it's a shame, but in this one, he is is better than in the previous two. He does have some charming moments, and it's very nice to see him once again. There is also a great use of kind of the way in which really the weight of everything that's going on here, the tragedy of all this is kind of is on his shoulders the most, you could say, of any of the characters in the film, and Obi-Wan as well, definitely, because it's more of a personal thing as well, with obviously Anakin turning to the dark side and him failing as a mentor, really, but Yoda is very interesting with subtle moments throughout, and the moment with him in Order 66, that whole sequence, really is, it's very effective. It's quite a stunning moment, actually, and just love different interactions in this film as well. Could have been developed further, definitely, in between action sequences, interactions between the characters. Once again, it is lacking for my liking a little bit, and obviously it's a lot to balance out. It's not a long film, this one, really, at all, but so you've got a lot to kind of pack in here. I just think the whole thing of the Clone Wars as well, so this being 3 years after the what's happened in the previous entry, naturally it does feel it's a shame, the balance of what's going on here with the lore and different events in the timeline. It's just not, it's not ideal, I guess, and it's kind of felt here. But for the most part, focusing on Anakin's turn to Darth Vader and the dark side, it doesn't affect the film as much as Attack of the Clones, for example. What's going on there in the final act more. But yes, getting into the second half of the film, obviously with Order 66 and the like, it does turn darker, and I think for the most part, it is effective. But there is, as I say, it's some abrupt turns, moments, kind of scenes here and actions from characters that I just it's not fully convincing for me, and what we have in the final act, is this very talked about, kind of set of sequences, in Star Wars, and obviously Obi-Wan versus Anakin. The inevitable kind of duel moment there with the clash. A very interesting sequence, and one of the most talked about, kind of sequences of the prequel trilogy. And for me, to sum it up, it's visually very, very good. I think The score is absolutely stunning there. Ewan McGregor especially, stunning performance here. You know, really is. You know, you really feel, you know, his kind of his sadness, his regrets. You know, his kind of worthlessness, really. You know, in the sense that he's failed. You know, as a master, as a mentor to Anakin. You know, his you know, his kind of student, I guess, and just the kind of madness of it all. You know, kind of with Palpatine, and you know, kind of turning Anakin, and yeah, it does. It is effective. It is sad. You know, it's a sense of tragedy is definitely felt at times, but it's not. I really don't think it's what it could have been. Not just because of the previous two entries, but just even in this film. You know, it's just not what it could have been. It's not. I don't think this masterful tragedy. Which, not to compare it too much, but you know, seeing the originals, you know, one would really expect, you know, just for my liking. I know a lot of people love this film, and that's fine. You know, but I think, you know, considering the originals, you know, you would think, or I would think, you know, wow, that would be something else. That would be you know, really something there. But you know, for me, all three of these films, they never, you know, at all live up to that promise. This one does the most, but you know, that sense of tragedy, the betrayal aspect of it, you know, and just the whole kind of Shakespearean-like, yeah, tragedy in an epic sense. It's never quite, you know, there really for me. And one of the reasons as well, you know, we have a few reasons, but one of them is just, you know, the portrayal of Anakin once again. You know, I think Hayden Christensen, you know, is a really good actor. You know, and in this film, you know, it's definitely better than, you know, the portrayal than Attack of the Clones, but it's still, you know, there's a couple of moments, you know, even in the final battle there, but it's just, you know, the dialogue does not come off well, basically, for me, and it does detract even then in those pivotal, you know, epic sequences, you know, where there isn't too much dialogue really needed there, but even just the dialogue that is there, it just really, you know, it does take me out of the film. A couple of the line deliveries there, and the dialogue itself, it's just very strange. You know, I have the higher ground. Personally, I just don't get that kind of the way that works quite. You know, of course, and just the way, yeah, the dialogue and the leading, you know, the action after that, and then the reaction. Just that whole kind of scene there, it just doesn't work for me really. And obviously we have some very over the top moments where they jump in between, you know, kind of stages there, and it's quite funny at times. But yes, you know, what I will say as well, you know, we have a lot of emotion in that final duel. You know, a lot of variety in the sequence. I do commend that. It's very interesting visually, but there's too much flashiness once again with the lightsaber, you know, kind of movements. Whatever the case, whatever the justification there, for me as a viewer, cinematically, as an, you know, an action scene, as a duel, you know, as a fight sequence, it's just too flashy. It really is. It's not visceral enough for me to be calling it, you know, a masterful, you know, set piece overall. Because, yeah, the Phantom Menace, you know, they got it right. They really did the impacts, you know, every blow, the kind of the choreography there, you know, just the character's reactions, the emotion, you know, that being, you know, kind of the action being an extension of that. Nothing, you know, compared to the originals, but it really was a standout sequence there. It was stunning, absolutely stunning, and the actual impact there, it's not felt here. It's just too much, you know, swirling around, jumping around. You know, so much going on there. It's quite bizarre. Overall, though, because it's such an emotional moment. You know, I think the acting as well, it really is something else there, and the music, and just the actual variety of the action and different moments there. It is, you know, overall a very good sequence. It just isn't quite, for me, living up to the potential there, and you know, I think then it does lead into obviously Anakin we see, you know, how he needed the suit really in a sense, and you know, how, you know, we have at the end of, you know, Return of the Jedi there, we have obviously the reveal of Darth Vader and all that, and seeing him, you know, all the kind of injuries there, if you like, and we have, you know, the kind of the prequels that are kind of showing that here in this sequence. You know, he does get burned very badly, and very, you know, kind of injured there, and then it does lead to obviously Obi-Wan. You know, I will say the reaction you know, it's a great piece of acting there, and you know the lighting and all this, the effects. You know, it's a very very effective sequence. You know, in the sense of his line delivery there. You know, and just wow. You know, he's so great in that sequence there. But the character, the way it's done, you know, the kind of the coldness. Really, you could say all of a sudden to Anakin. You know, the one that he did train up. You know, from a young age. It's just a bit too cold, perhaps. You know, there's not that perfect balance there with the kind of the underlying humanity and the warmth that, you know, for example, the originals had. With obviously the dark edge to, you know, the dark stuff that's going on. I just think it's a bit too cold the way he's left there as well. And yeah, just for me personally as a viewer, it's a bit much. Then it of course leads to we find out a few things in the kind of final moments there, and we do see Anakin becoming Darth Vader with a suit, and you know the kind of extended uttering of that. When he hears the news, of course, of Padme, you know, her dying, and that he couldn't stop it, even though he did turn to the dark side. So we have that. We have an effective, you know, kind of use of that in the sense of theme, and the narrative and the way the arc develops, kind of culminates there. It is effective in what Lucas was trying to do, you know, in this film, especially, you know, him being tempted to the dark side in order to be able to do this, and the false promise of that, I guess, and that some of the Sith and the dark side really, and obviously Anakin being weak in that sense, and him turning to the dark side in order to try and, you know, to save Padme. Obviously, you know, the fact that it doesn't happen in the end anyway, and then, you know, really he's got no one. He's lost everything really, and he is now under the control really and the influence of the Emperor, and you know, he is a Sith. So it is a very, you know, tragic film. At times I would have liked more humanity in that final act though. We do have some hope though in the final moments and the final shots. Obviously we see how Luke and Leia were split up, you know, to different families, obviously for their protection, and you know, I think that's really good. Although once again it's a bit too rushed, just for my liking there in the final moments, and it's very much, you know, there we go, done. We do have a great moment though when we learn of Qui-Gon Jinn, you know, and him being able to, we have that basic reveal that he's able to contact once again Obi-Wan, and he is, you know, he lives on in that sense. You know, that gives me shivers really, linking back to a great friendship, you know, and great chemistry there in the Phantom Menace that was hinted at. So yeah, you know, that's a really cool moment. But the final shots, it feels a bit artificial for me. You know, the kind of the very final shots there. It just, something feels a bit off. You know, I know obviously what he's doing. Everyone does, but it just in the execution there, you know, it just was a bit off for my liking. Seeing it first time round, you know, the emotions were, you know, that was really something, and you know, kind of now, you know, seeing it a few times over the last a couple of years, you know, 2 times, of course. Yeah, I do think this is a very good film. It's very much. There is more, you know, that I think could have been done. You know, it's got a lot of potential here to be an even greater film, just for me personally, but it's not quite there. Overall, it's a very, very good film. You know, we have much more, you know, depth to the characters. We have a way more consistent, you know, just entertaining film. It really is completely different to the previous 2. The fact that this is not just maybe a 10% step up in my rating, that says it all really. You know, it knocks it out of the park. You know, the previous 2 entries. I think even Attack of the Clones, it's very average for me. This one is way better. It's visually stunning at times. We have obviously for me a lot of flaws, you know, in the CGI, the way it's used. At times, once again, it's just too heavy as well. There's too much of it, I guess, and you know, it lacks. Once again, it's very clean, very clean looking, very glossy. And at times blurred, once again, I will say that, but it's just way better than the previous 2. I've talked about that more in Attack of the Clones and Phantom Menace, so we won't go into that too much of that, you know, here, but definitely some flaws, once again, throughout in the visuals. The score is flawless, you know, from John Williams, you know, of course, absolutely stunning, especially, you know, of course, the final sequences there, you know, really is something else. Battle of the Heroes, you know, piece, that track, it really is something else, and it brings a lot of emotion out in me. So there we go. The editing is once again a step up, as I say, and just I do feel something from this emotion, this one, and the characters, and seeing Anakin is just way better than he is in the previous two. And his turns to the dark side, being really prevalent here, it's definitely more compelling, and we don't have as too much as well. Focus on these, for me, just pointless dialogue, political sequences, scenes where it's just very, very boring in the previous two. This one doesn't really have too much of that. It's more focused on the characters, on pivotal moments, closure, of course, and setting up things, for the next films in the timeline, and the rest of the universe. Really, this being the origin trilogy, the prequels. So yes, overall, it's a satisfying film, very much so. It's a very, very good film. I can't deny that. There is a few things missing for me, but it's just easily, leaps and bounds the best of the prequel trilogy, and it's not one of my favorite Star Wars films, but it is far and away the best of the prequels. And I do put this above quite a few of the Star Wars films actually, but it's definitely not quite there for being a great film for me personally. Overall, my final rating for this film is an 88%. So a very high score from me, and obviously if you watch my previous reviews, it's far better than for me the previous two in the prequels. It's very much the visuals are a step up. The music, of course, once again stunning. The acting is even better than the previous ones. The script, once again, is a real. It's definitely a hindrance at times. It's a step up, but I think it's just the filmmaking and the overall the consistency of this film, and just the way it's made and told as an entertainment piece, as a blockbuster. It really is at times so epic and kind of well done that it doesn't really matter too much about the dialogue. Being obviously for me a hindrance. It's not great dialogue for most of the film, but it is elevated from the actual the film itself in that sense. Obviously, the script, screenwriting is a pivotal part of any film really, but you can kind of get away with it, I guess a bit more if the score and the visuals and the way it's told, just jumping between action set pieces, and just kind of acting from different characters is so good that it does elevate. It's not a bad script overall, but it's definitely a very flawed script, and quite inconsistent at times. Even with character motivations, I'm still not behind quite a few of the character motivations in this, particularly with Anakin, the way it's portrayed. It's not fully believable for me. Having said that, because everything around it, is so good at times, it does elevate that. So yes, it's a fascinating film. I don't think it's great. I think it's just very, very good with great elements, and Act 1 is a fun rollicking ride. The whole first act or first hour really is full kind of entertainment there. Some lulls here and there, but generally the flow, as I've said, is quite consistent throughout, and it's more, I guess, action heavy consistently than the previous two, and what is there visually is much better. It's got some really good use of humour at times early on. I love as well the moment "Hello there" from Ewan McGregor. That's kind of a very funny moment, and just that whole adventurous fun set piece there with General Grievous. That's one of the best moments of the film for me, and as well in the final act, despite my flaws with the final act and things not living up fully, I do think it's very good. Some rousing moments, especially the score, and just the set pieces there is, although quite bizarre at times and too flashy, it's definitely a really very impressive set piece, and I do feel some echoes of kind of the emotions of the whole universe of Star Wars here. Even it makes me think back to the originals. I don't think it ever kind of truly makes me feel like I'm watching a Star Wars film when compared to the originals, but it does its best. Really, that's what I can say. And considering the previous two entries for me were not at all to the standard, I think Attack of the Clones is average. and that's the best really that those two got to. But despite all that, I do think the fact that Revenge of the Sith is near great really for me as an overall film. That's saying something. So yes, seeing it at the time was really it's really cool, and I have some good memories of that. And over the years, I've not seen it too much, but when I have seen it, I guess it's definitely been the standout to me of the prequels, and just portraying Anakin's the full transition to Darth Vader, his full transition to the dark side, despite being very flawed and kind of unbelievable at times and rushed. I do think it's overall, it's satisfying enough in that sense, considering the previous two entries. So yes, that's my thoughts on Revenge of the Sith. Visually stunning at times. Wonderfully scored film with some really good performances, especially from Ewan McGregor. He is just great in this film. An emotional resonance as well, and seeing the conclusion of this, this trilogy, it is very satisfying at times. Other times, not so much. But that's I think it's a flawed film, but a very good one. I do mostly love this film actually. Overall, it's not quite great, but it really is. It's quite something at times. I don't think it's a great film overall, but as I say, it's near great, and definitely great elements to the film. So yes, it's been great to kind of review this film. What do you think of this? It'd be great to hear your thoughts on this and the prequels in general. What do you think of this trilogy? It's always great to talk Star Wars. So yes, we'll kind of look forward to discussing this from the comments, and share your thoughts, your experiences. I guess most Star Wars films are nostalgic to me, and this one being, I was around 10 when I saw this, so it's still in my kind of early days. I definitely remember vividly, seeing this for the first time, being impressed and involved in this film, definitely much more so than the previous two, and it's cool to kind of see this again, on Blu-ray as well. It's quite good to look at, obviously. Again, some things, in the CGI and all this kind of stuff, and the script. But overall, despite my flaws with the film, I think it does a lot right, and some great aspects to this film. George Lucas, his final Star Wars film. So yeah, what could have been with later films? Who knows? That's not the case. We didn't get that. We got this being the final George Lucas directed Star Wars film. So yes. In that sense, it's a great one to go out on, for the last ones, because it is, the best of the trilogy. So yes, hats off once again to Lucas for creating Star Wars, and this is a fascinating film. Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, the best of the prequel trilogy, and for me, a very, very good film, and one that I do get a lot of enjoyment from. We'll be very, very soon, kind of going into the sequel trilogy as well, and we have. The Force Awakens, reviewing that, and going through, in release date order, so Rogue One, before The Last Jedi kind of thing, and going through all those films. Solo as well, we'll be talking about that, and Rise of Skywalker. So I look forward to that, that's way more, kind of, it's a crazy kind of set of films really, I guess, it's very inconsistent, but I do have some positive things to say, especially about one of those films, I'll be talking about my opinions, whatever the case of what I think of those films, and be respectful as a Star Wars fan, and just kind of interested as a viewer, as a Star Wars fan, to talk about those films. They're all fascinating films, and look forward to that. So look out for that, over the next few weeks, continuing with the next the Star Wars entries there. And yes, it'd be cool to go through those films as well. So yes, as always, take care, and thanks for watching.